Hi, and thank you for joining us today on the Road to Recovery. I'm your host, Rhonda Jackson, serial entrepreneur and small business advocate. And today we have the pleasure of having Michelle Cauley of Cauley and Associates with us today. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Rhonda.
couldn't, I couldn't think of a better time to introduce a conversation with you, considering everything that's going on in the world, and then cue the holidays, which is a major time for people grappling with, the emotions of uncertainty, a time for depression and things like that. So I just really wanted to have that, that nice warm talk to kind of kick off the holidays. So I thank you for being here today.
Thank
What
you.
For the world or for the people that aren't familiar with you and your work, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and Cauley Associates?
Sure. Calling and Associates, we are a private practice, a group practice here in Los Angeles, based in Los Angeles.
Okay.
There are a group of, we're all licensed clinicians. We're also coaches, consultants, educators, and we focus on, for the layman person, individual therapy, couples therapy, family therapy. But we also train corporations in terms of the culture and what might be happening in corporations. If
I
that makes
No, it does, because and being familiar with your work, I know how I like to think of it is you cover an individual as a whole self, right?
that
Their work self, their personal self, their family self, so that inward and outward balance. And that's one of the things that I've always admired about your work. So thank you
thank
again for being here. But one of the ways I like to start the show is I like to ask for one word that you would use to describe the times. What word would you use?
Of course, as a clinician, I want to automatically go toward the positive, right? Because that's just how I think. Um, Realistically, I think that we are in uncertain times.
Okay, uncertain times. And is it just because of the pandemic that you say that you would label that word, or is there more to it than that?
I think it's a combination. This has been a really interesting year. We are in a place that we've never been in before. There is not research based on it. And so, given where we are, and now, we think of the holidays and what the thoughts and what that brings about, right? And how we're supposed to be. But yet, you know, th- this is where we are. So that's why I say uncertainty if I look at the whole year and try to just categorize it.
I understand. I understand. Well, one of the things that you and I loved our pre-talk, so I'm really hoping that we can share a lot of the nuggets that we shared around 5 tips for beating holiday blues, or staying getting back to that mindset of positivity. So one of the things that you talked about was getting the proper help. Can you say a little more about what that means and what that looks like in a tangible sense? Well, where would someone who has never visited a professional start?
Right. So ideally, the first start is if you're feeling if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling sad, blue, I mean there I can name so many descriptives.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with reaching out to a professional. First of all, I think it's smart. I think it's healthy, emotionally healthy, mentally healthy. And so especially, and just remember, sometimes people start to have physical complaints, and sometimes we start to have emotional complaints.
Right.
Emotional complaints and physical complaints are the same thing. And so what happens is you can't really separate them from each other.
I
And so if we are having those, sometimes it becomes about um mentally, we need to be able to mentally reach out and have someone try reach out for help.
I like that. And I like that you tied the two together, because a lot of times some of our physical is because of the mental,
Mhm.
as well as some of the mental being part of the physical. So, creating that
That's
limitation on your body, whether it be in thinking, time, energy, and what have you, it shows up in your life somewhere. So then
right.
so then the next step, once you've identified that you need help or that you'd like that type of support, what would you do next?
And so some people have, if you have insurance, that's the first place to go. I always recommend reaching out to your insurance. And people say, well, I don't know, or do I need to know a person? Ask for a filter. So in your insurance, if you call and say, you know what, I need a mental health clinician, I want a woman.
Ah,
I want a woman that focuses on depression.
yeah.
want a woman that speaks Spanish, or I want a Black woman. So what happens is they can do some of the front work for you. And
Right.
then what happens is you can start to filter those things out as opposed to just getting a huge list and then being able to, because that becomes overwhelming too. The other part of it is also ask a friend, hey, do you know someone? Have you ever, had therapy before? Or, can you refer someone to me?
Okay, so now with asking a friend, and I think even seeking the help, there's another component to where we need, what place we need to be in. And I call that receivership, but I think you called it like acknowledging your feelings. So
That's
how do we distinguish between get help feelings and bad day feelings?
And so let's just be real. We are all going to have days where we just feel blue,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
If there's a person that's like, I'm always happy and I'm always getting, I'm just like, something's going on, which is okay. But, if you think about just that, maybe there was something happened with a family member or a friend or something that happened at work, or, someone said something and, you're a little perturbed,
Right.
that's normal. But if there is a sense of when feelings have been, for the most part, 1 or 2 weeks where, I'm just kind of feeling in a rut and it's hard to get past it. Um, that I think that would be the indicator where it's like, okay, let me try to reach out to someone to see. And the thing about it is reaching out to a professional is great, but also thinking about your source of support and your system. you know have I actually, called my sister or my friend or my spouse, or or talk to someone about these things.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, the support system, the network, our community, or our, families. How would or what would be one way to approach if you were the sister, you were the support, and you were trying to encourage someone just to look into it, not one way or another, we all have our, our albatross to carry or bear, but how would you approach a conversation like that? What's a nice, easy way to,
Well, Rhonda, those things happen all the time. And so when they come up, I just, someone will come say, "Hey, Michelle, I need to talk to you about something," especially if it's someone personal.
Mhm.
And I'll say, "Look, girl, I'm not your therapist," because especially personally. And so of course, as a girlfriend, it's hard to be, I can't really be therapeutically objective. But
Right.
as a girlfriend, I might say, look, here are some thoughts, as we as women give girlfriend advice,
Right.
or sisterly advice. However, I know a lot of people that I can also recommend as well. But if it's someone that's not like a clinician like me, of course, people know people, and in terms of like whatever the concern is, or whatever, so whether it's something like, I mean, if it is mental health, of course, idea would be a therapist. But if it's something else, it's like, who else could help you? And so really, it's really just about the support, whether it's something that's faith-based, or whether it's something that's career related, or whether it's, relationship related.
So what about an opportunity? So I have a friend, crying for weeks, every time I talk, it's, nothing ever. I mean, from formerly being, adequately positive, not like, fairy tales and things like that, but where,
Mhm.
things were optimistic and hopeful, and we've gotten to this point, and I'll use this year as an example, where things don't always look so sunny, or, we've kind of exhausted mentally where sunny is, or what even sunny looks like. It's been a minute since, that version of happy in our lives, that normal has been here. So then what would I say to that girlfriend? Like if she, if I thought, okay, you know what, I watched this episode of Road to Recovery, they talk about reaching out and looking for assistance. How would I tell that person that that's something that they should look into?
And so really it's just kind of, you think about, and of course I think about unpacking each situation. And so if let's just look at this year. And if a girlfriend has come to you and she's talking about, I'm having a difficult time, or I need this, really looking at each individual situation about like what's really going on.
Okay.
Are you is it because you're schooling from home and it's really hard?
Right.
Do you need support? Maybe if it is about your child, looking at resources there. If it's a relationship, what's going on? What are you doing? How are you contributing to it? I mean, just it's really about a conversation. And sometimes, people feel like we have to have the answers. We don't always have to have the answers. Sometimes it's really just like, you know what, thanks for listening. I just needed to talk it out. And sometimes when we start to talk it out, which is the idea of support and help, is
Yeah.
once we start to talk it out, it's like, oh, I feel so much better.
You're not carrying it around. You're not
Yeah,
carrying.
and that's it. It's like a release, you
Mhm.
know?
Yes. No, I get it. Trust, I get it. I'm a friend and a client, remember? I'm a friend and a client. Okay, so we're beating holiday blues. We're doing that by getting the help that we need. We're reaching out to our support systems. We've acknowledged our feelings. Like, so you're telling me that it's okay, Rhonda, to feel like this today.
It is okay. I mean, especially now. So we think about like where we are at this point in time.
Yes.
COVID's here, right? People have like lost people
Yeah.
through death, and that's hard. Or we can't visit our family members, because of all the restrictions, or just wanting to be safe. And so it's normal to be able to have to feel, sad, or the loss of, not traveling, because the holidays are here, or because I've someone has died and now I'm grieving, I'm mourning and I'm grieving.
Yes.
So it's the most important thing is when we talk about acknowledging our feelings, it's a way to self-express ourselves.
Okay.
And then once we're able to express it, which is like being heard, because we all want to be heard, right?
Right.
And so once we're able to express ourselves and be heard, then it feels so much better. And we don't have to force ourselves into I should just be happy, or I should just shake this. It's like, okay, you know what? This is normal. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. And
Right.
this is where I am, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And I think that one of the things that you mentioned in one of our pre-talks also helps, and it's around. So we've been talking conversation focused on internally what we feel, but there's sometimes external things that we need to kind of rid ourselves of or forgive ourselves for, or I'm sure you'll describe more steps to this, but can you talk a little bit about that when external influences are there and how to deal with those?
And so, oh gosh, yes, that can look so many different ways. So, and if we look at internally and externally, I think about, of course, anxiety, right?
Right.
Because we all have anxiety. We have good anxiety, angst, and then we have not so good angst, right?
Right.
And so, with anxiety, because our bodies don't really know if it's good or not, it just knows I'm feeling some kind of way. And
Right.
those feelings can come out in so many different ways. And I'm just going to use stress as an example.
Okay, sure.
It can come out as, oh, I'm breaking out, or my hair's coming out, or I'm not sleeping. I wake up every night at 2 a.m. So that's external. That's how like anxiety portrays itself externally. And in terms of internally, it's, I'm just feeling kind of keyed up. I'm just kind of feeling edgy, or that saying, "Oh, my nerves are bad." I don't know if you've ever heard it like,
Yes.
it's the same thing. Or just really that overwhelm. The
Mhm.
overwhelm, or just that worry, the worry about, my finances, my job, my kids, my relationship, Christmas. Am I going to be able to, or Hanukkah, if that's what all of those things.
Right.
And so what happens is it shows up externally. And so, we can focus on, if you think about externally, like, are we going to have Christmas dinner or a holiday dinner?
Right. Right.
Are we going to be able to, do these things? What about all of us, so that right there can bring about angst and stress and worry. And
Right.
then internally, it's how it affects us as well.
I understand. I love that. So the other external, and I know that this happens in family settings, and the close quarters that we've had as some of our partnerships and in marriages, and are living together, or like you said, the homeschooling, is
Mhm.
how do we go about setting aside external differences where we don't have the outlets that we had before. Family can't go bowling together, to kind of
Yeah. Mhm.
bonds and things like that. So you kind of talk a little bit, especially right, we're here at the holidays now, and here's another formal reason why, togetherness and, being together is important, but now we've been together for quite some time now.
Mhm. Yeah.
Can you give some tips or some suggestions for rekindling that bond?
Mhm. So when you say set aside differences, oftentimes I hear in my professional world,
Yeah.
you know, it's the holidays. And, you know, it's an expectation, that we all have to get together. And it's an expectation that it's all happy. And I am dreading it or I'm so stressed. And so, what I say, or my suggestion right now is if at all possible, let's try and set aside those differences, right?
Mm,
Even if we know that our family members don't, live up to our expectations,
right.
um, because this has been, as I mentioned earlier, when you talk about how do I describe it, the year of uncertainty, or at least that's the word that comes up for me. um it's important to try to say, okay, well, you know what, the focus is, if we're not all together, or I don't have to anticipate us all together, or even anticipate us not being together, I don't want to have to lend that energy to, what has happened or what hasn't happened, or my relationship with the uncle or the aunt, or, or the family member. um
No, that's good. I like where you're going with that, and I like the premise that you've taking some of that ownership off of ourselves. Because the one thing that we have to acknowledge is that person has feelings too. That
that's right.
person is going through things on their own too. So now you've got two people going, or three or four or five, going through things independently and then trying to commune and come together. So sometimes that space is good. That space is
Mhm,
good. So
mhm.
will you give us one thing that every person, because some of us are in denial, right? We don't, oh no, nothing's bad, everything will happen, it'll be good, we kind of, that's our a defense mechanism for ourselves, right? That we're just
Mhm,
gonna over optimistically look ahead and ignore some of the signs and the things that are in front of us on the road to recovery.
mhm.
What would your advice be there, or what would you recommend that every person do?
Right now, I check in with yourself first. You
Okay.
know, let's just do a self check in. And really, if I were to say, okay, so Michelle, how are you? How are you today? And you know what? Today, I'm okay. I'm okay. Or I'm not even really sure. And so, if we start to try to be authentically honest with ourselves first,
Yes.
and then we can try to be authentically open and honest and accepting with the next person, with our next family member,
Right.
right? And so we think about the expectations, because we all have them, that we normally have for someone. It's just like, well, wait a minute, chances are they're feeling the effects of the holidays and the pandemic and this year as well as we are too.
Yeah, I like actually what I'm taking away from this, and tell me if I've got all of this in my brain, because I feel kind of recharged just even from the release from not being responsible for, or account, not having the ownership for the problems of the world, right? Things are, kind of all over the place, but that doesn't mean it all has to weigh on that one
That's
individual.
right. That's
But
right.
I love what I heard you say was to have the truth, right? Have that truth conversation with yourself about how are you feeling. That check, I call it the checkup from the neck up.
I love it. Check up
Yeah,
from
check up
the neck
from the
up.
neck
There
up.
you go. And I say me, myself, and I,
Yeah,
right?
just you.
That's where it starts, because you
Mhm.
can't trick yourself.
No, no. So we got truth. And then I like the level set on the expectations, because sometimes those unspoken expectations are what gets us in a world of trouble. And
Mhm.
then what I'm hearing you say at the end of all of that is the resolve or the acceptance of
Yes,
what's happening around you, acknowledging yourself and your feelings. It's not his fault, it's not your fault, and you can kind of start to kind of get to a level plane where you can, step out of the weeds and kind of see a little more clear. So
mhm.
I'm gonna call it the T, right? The truth, the expectation, and the acceptance.
Yeah, the tea.
Yeah, so that's the real T.
Yes, the real tea.
That's the real
Yes.
tea. No, this is beautiful. So, Michelle, I know that you are a very resourceful practitioner, and you have a lot of resources available. If there was anything gleaned from this episode and someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect or have access to resources?
Sure, absolutely. So our, I guess we can start with our website, which is Cauley, Cauley, and then the word associates, all spelled out, plural,
Okay.
CauleyAssociates.com. That's the easiest, quickest way to reach us. There's information on our website, our address is there, our phone numbers are there, our email addresses are there. And in my office, it's not just myself. There's myself, and then I have 5 other therapists. We all have different specialties and focuses. And of course, whenever someone reaches out to us, if we feel that it's, not a good fit, or I know someone else that has a specialty, that's more specialized than me, and in your area of concern, I'd be happy to share a referral.
Referrals.
Um,
That's
yeah,
great. That's
absolutely.
wonderful. So we will also include that information in the description box below. It will be right below the lovely subscribe button. So if you haven't clicked the little red button by now, please do that before you leave us, and or check out more of the episodes that will help you on this journey, that you're not alone. We get expert tips for our emerging and established entrepreneurs on the road to recovery. Thank you again for being here today, Michelle.
Thank you, Rhonda. This is a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Good, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.